Hi, everybody. Glad to be with you again. This is the game Nakamura So from the London Chess Classic that just started round one. And Nakamura has the white pieces, Wesley So with the black pieces. And Wesley So is kind of like a creeper up the ranks because he's never really in that conversation. Usually, when people start discussing a world championship challenger for Magnus Carlsen, usually it's like Fabiano Caruana or was Karyakin or Geary, somebody like that. Wesley So kind of slips through the cracks, you know. But he's playing some good chess, and he's hovering around 2,800. And this is a good game between two rivals now. So Nakamura had the white pieces and started off with d4, knight f6 from So, c4, g6. Are we going to get a King's Indian? Knight c3. Question is still up in the air. No, we're going to get a Grunfeld defense, which is a very sound defense for black. And a specialist of this defense is Peter Svidler, of course. This is known as the exchange variation of the Grunfeld, and we're not going to get into it real deep because there's a lot of theory attached, and you can always study the theory. We're just going to talk about some general ideas and concepts of the opening. But here, white gives up the center quite willingly. Excuse me, black gives up the center quite willingly, allowing this dual pawn center after e4. Knight takes c3 and b takes c3. So we see that white has this huge pawn center. Just going through this quickly for the beginner players, because I'm sure a lot of intermediate and stronger players already know what's going on here. But just briefly, the basic trade-off here in these modern or hyper-modern openings is that black will often allow white to occupy the center with pawns and then vigorously attack it, and to prove that the center is a liability for white. So the idea for white basically is to strengthen his center as quick as possible by reinforcing his pawns with support from the pieces as quick as possible. Now, if he's able to maintain that center as is, then going into an end game and just going forward even into the middle game, it will be a tremendous asset and advantage to white if we can keep those pawns mobile and reinforce them with pieces. So that's basically white's job, is to first support his center with pieces and then mobilize them to drive black off the board. Black's job is to demobilize the center, right? Because in order to attack something, you must first stop it from moving, because it's hard to hit a moving target. So first, you freeze it, right? That's Nimzovich's principles. You freeze the target first, then you attack it vigorously and destroy it. Okay? So this is the basic idea. So black is going to try to destroy the center. White is going to try to support it. Bishop g7. We already can see the powerful action of the bishop right on the diagonal, attacking the center from far, which is one of the main principles of the hypermoderns. Bishop e3, supporting the center, but at the same time playing queen d2 and trading off this powerful bishop if given the opportunity. c5, again vigorously attacking the center. Notice how black wastes no time in attacking the center. Rook c1, anticipating breaks on the c-file, and then having the rook being in the right place. There are many games in this line between Karpov and Kasparov. This is an old line. If you want to look at some good games. Check out the championship matches from the 1987 match between Karpov, Kasparov, and this line. Karpov was playing white and beat Kasparov a couple of games. Okay, so rook c1, castles. And notice here too that the price that white has paid for setting up his powerful center is he has fallen behind in development somewhat. His king is still in the middle of the board, and notice his king side pieces are all undeveloped. And this will also play a major factor in the game. Now, let's get rid of the graphics. Now, as long as the position remains closed, right, and this is pretty much a closed position, then white being behind in development is crucial. But if the position somehow gets open, then his lack of development is definitely critical. So therefore, we can see that black's strategy then, as long as white is behind in development, is to strive to open up the position. And you'll see that in the next few moves, those are ideas. So queen d2, like I said, notice again the lack of development here on the king side. E5, another attack against the pawn, right? The pawn chain in white center. Now white is faced with the choice: the capture, which would just totally destroy his center, because white could play a move like d takes c5, for instance, but his center, his pawns would be just totally destroyed. And then black, instead of trading queens, could play a move, for instance, like queen h4, attacking this, and then having ideas of bringing the rook here to d8. You know, starting this attack again while these pieces are out of play. Then play could go, for instance, queen c2, getting the queen out off the file and protecting this. Queen back, anticipating the knight coming here. And then we have a game. And I think, but black is perfectly fine. These pawns are going to be more of a liability to black as the game, to white as the game goes forward. So d5 was played by Nakamura. Again, same thing with d takes e5. That's this, again, these pawns will be horrible. And for instance, queen takes and bishop takes. This is nothing for white to write home about. And if he takes with the king, figuring the king will be safe in the endgame, black can just easily gain some tempo, some time, just attacking the king. Let's say knight f3, for example, and just bishop c6. And then eventually the pressure on these pawns will allow black to equalize the position. So for instance, bishop d3 looks like it's, a good move, but then remember, there's only one piece protecting that bishop. So if we can distract it somehow, the only move to keep protecting that bishop is to play that, but then that leads to a pin, and when we get a pin, we win, and then we just play c4. The bishop is lost. So that's just an example to show you that e5 is not just a move which hangs a pawn. So after e5, Nakamura plays the move d5. Now, again, another pawn move means that's another move where white is not developing his pieces. The second thing I want you to think about is that, okay, white has this passed pawn here. So this will be deadly in the end game. But before the end game is the middle game. Okay? So obviously Wesley So has either thought about this over the board or he's prepared this already. So he allows the pass pawn. The third thing I want you to think about is what I said earlier about fixing the object of attack. So after d5 is done, it's played, notice the rigidness of the structure. And now, once the structure is fixed like that, it's easier to attack. Okay, so now knight d7 is played, and now c4 is played. Now these pawns aren't going anywhere for a while. So this is basically going to be the structure that we're dealing with. Now that we have this structure and we can see that it is a closed position, again, let's reassess what's going on. We had this situation again where white has no development on the king side. His king is in the middle of the board. I already told you that that means that since black has a leading development, he should be trying to open up the position to exploit that lead in development. Second, let's look at the breaks. Okay, so after this move c4, this rook, let's just, make some acknowledgments about the position. This rook is now misplaced because it's just biting on granite. So the rook has to be moved. Ideal place for the rook now is probably here on b1. But again, that takes time. And we see white's whole entire king side hasn't been developed. So that's another idea to think about. Now let's look at the breaks for black. Now the position reminds me, and hopefully you too, of a King's Indian, those type of positions where black plays for f5. That's definitely one of black's breaks right here to break down this white center. The other break for black is b5. Get rid of some graphics. The other break for black is b5. Now, one of the downsides of a move like b5 is that after c takes b5, this pawn on the c file will become really weak. And let me just show you real quick. And just subject to harassment. So that's possible. Down the road. I'm not saying right there. I was just giving you an example. If b5 is one of the possible breaks, but we can probably reject that because it creates too much counterplay for white. The other break, however, f5 is right up black's alley. Would open up the f file for the rook, which doesn't have to be moved. So instant development, and it goes along with the idea of of the white king not being castled, along with the pieces on the king side not being castled. So the move f5 jumps out at me right away and subsequently creates an instant threat because his pawn is not protected at all. White, for his side, should try to keep the position closed and shouldn't be thinking about opening anything. But a break opportunity for white here is f4. But white is not in any position to play f4 now. And like I said, he shouldn't be trying to open up the position being behind in development. f5 as predicted. So again, Nakamura is faced with a decision here. Now, I think strategically he should be trying to keep the position closed until he can catch up in development. So he plays bishop g5. So it's kind of like an in-between move. So for instance, if you try to move like f3, then f takes e6. Excuse me, f takes e4. And then if f takes e4, then the queen, exposing the fact that the king is unprotected, will just pick up this pawn real quick. Bishop d3. Hope you can see that just loses. This drops a piece after f4. So all Nakamura can do is move a piece again. And he can take, but again, like I was saying, it might not be in his best interest to try to open up the position, engage in combat with he can play e takes, but it might not be in his best interest to try to engage in hand-to-hand combat right now with this position like this. But who knows? But I can see why he didn't do it right away. Again, if he tries to go with his original plan, this lets you know that something has gone wrong. Then just simply bishop takes, queen takes, and excuse me, f takes e4. So it just shows you the problems white is facing already, just due to a simple lack of development here. So f5, bishop g5, again with the blatant attack on the queen. Knight f6, just putting more pressure here. And I like Wesley So's idea because he's actually threatening to take that pawn because of the position of the queen on d2. Nakamura plays knight e2, possibly planning to try to bring the knight to c3 or g3. And he either overlooks or estimates Wesley So's next move. Okay, so after knight e2, knight takes e4, leaves the queen wide open, but he's attacking the queen here. And again, this move is pretty easy to find when you think real hard about what I was saying earlier. Is black is ahead of development and white's king is in the middle of the board. Just open up the position, and that's what happens. This move, bishop g5, designed to keep things under control for a little while. So Nakamura thought he had time to consolidate things. And Wesley So says, no, you don't. So bishop takes d8, knight takes d2. And we have a little tactical thing going on here. Bishop e7. Rook f7. Just threatening here. And, excuse me, Nakamura takes the pawn. So he probably saw all of this. That's why I said he probably, I threw in that he probably underestimated, he misevaluated the position. Because I don't think he just didn't see it. He just he didn't appreciate it. So bishop takes c5. And knight takes f1. So we see black with the bishop here. And rook takes f1. Now, we look at the position now. We see the material is even here. Right? If we just count up the material. But white's pieces are really in like strange positions. And this alone gives black a huge advantage. This strange coordination, the rook on f1 behind this pawn, the rook on c1 behind this pawn, bishop on c5 is probably the best piece, and then this knight in front of the king on e2 looks real suspicious. Furthermore, these pawns are going to be hard to advance. So therefore, this pawn right here is going to be victimized first by the rooks, by potential rooks coming on the c file, and maybe the bishop coming here to f8. b6 is played, having a dual purpose, not only attacking the bishop. Of course, Wesley So doesn't expect to win the bishop right there, but he's going to start attacking this pawn. b6, bishop b4, and now notice how the scene is set. So he plays here to stop this pawn push. So he starts trying to take control of this square. And of course, Nakamura is smart. He wants to maintain control of that square so he can push this pawn. See? The attack begins. F4. That looks pretty primitive to me. Now, move like C5, for instance. Then B takes, and then just like a move like Rook D7. And now this pawn becomes victimized. Okay? So F4 is played. Of course, he would love to hop this knight here and then go there. So Rook C8. Again, see how simple the idea is once you understand the position? Just piling up on the weaknesses. Nakamura takes. Notice how this bishop is shutting down the action of this knight. Rook F3. And finally, the pawn just drops. Real simple. So he just stole a pawn, and now this pawn is the next victim. Knight F4. Rook D7. And notice how Nakamura had to move the knight there himself, right? So didn't give him the tempo by exchanging and allowing him to just gain free time to move his knight to F4. He made him do the work. And notice the same thing, the build up against this pawn. A4, and at this point, Nakamura is lost. Pin and win. Right? G3. And So just keeps it real simple. It gets rid of the antagonist, protector of D5, and now he takes D5. Can somebody make it look more like easier than this? This is what shows strength of great players. They make something that's difficult, which is beating a guy that's 27-79 and ranked in top 10 in the world, just beating him real easily. I mean, a lot of players would say, I can win this position, So, and Nakamura resigned. This is a great ending right here. Yeah, so Nakamura resigned at this point. Let's look at the last tactic real quick, because I know I kind of sped through the end because like I said, white is totally busted at this point. But at this point, let's go back to Bishop D2, move 28. So here we see Wesley So attacks Nakamura's rook here. So Nakamura could have took a pawn or something here, right? Say if he does rook takes A7, this was what happens. Again, there's only one piece protecting that bishop, like I showed you earlier, and the king gets driven away, and the bishop would be lost. So this is why the rook, in all its glory on the 7th rank, cannot move, because he would lose this bishop. So therefore, he tries to solve the problem with this move. So now he creates a discovery attempt against the king. So he figures, hey, on the next move, I'll use my rook to gobble up some pawns on the 7th. But then Wesley So, who seems to be in great form, touche. And it seems like that's one of the themes of this game is these pins. He pins Nakamura's rook, so Nakamura can't even move to for a discovered check himself. So it's like he pinned the pinner. and then Nakamura had to resign. So 29 move demolition by Wesley So in the first round. So watch out. I'm sure Magnus Carlsen was enjoying that from wherever he was, probably on vacation, but I'm sure he was watching that game. So anyway, please like and subscribe, comment on the videos, and I'll see you on the next one. I'm gonna look at some more games, and whatever I like, I'll comment on. So see you guys next time.